It's still alive, back with another one, and we're gonna get right off into this another Carmelo video. And if you guys have watched any of my other videos on Carmelo, you kind of know how I feel about this already, man. But make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. Let's get right off into this.
This case so heavy is that this was not one of those situations where the jury only had one option. Before the verdict, the jury had the option to convict Karmelo of murder, convict him of manslaughter, or find him not guilty if they believed this was self-defense. And even after the jury convicted him of murder, the defense still tried to argue something called sudden passion during sentencing, which would have lowered the punishment range and capped his sentence at only 20 years. But the jury rejected that as well. So now a case that started with an argument under a school tent during a rainy track meet has officially ended with one teenager dead and another one sentenced to 35 years in prison. But before we get into the sentence, let's quickly go back to what actually happened. If you guys want a very in-depth breakdown of
Sorry,
what
y'all, I
happened that
was
day
answering a
when
text.
Carmelo Anthony killed Austin Metcalf, check out my last video. The link will be in the description below as well. But just a very quick recap. A regular high school track meet in Frisco, Texas turned into a tragedy that shook the entire country. 17-year-old Austin Metcalf was stabbed once in the chest after an argument under a team tent. And another 17-year-old at the time, Carmelo Anthony, who's now 19, with murder. And according to the arrest report, Carmelo allegedly told police, "I was protecting myself," and later said, "I'm not alleged, I did it." Witnesses said the argument started because Carmelo was sitting under Memorial High School team tent during the rain.
Hearing people say that fact that he said, "I'm not alleged, I did it." But he wasn't saying that he killed him, he murdered him. He's saying, "I'm not the alleged suspect, though. Like, I did kill him." You know what I mean? But I didn't murder him. It was still self-defense. I'm the suspect who did it, though. He wasn't saying, he was just saying I'm not alleged. You know what I mean? Like, it was me. Like, I was the one involved in the altercation. You guys got me. You know what I mean? Now, that's why people don't say nothing to the cops if you're ever in a situation, because just the miswording of something can literally be used against you.
Went to a different school.
Ask for your
Austin and other
lawyer if
students
you're
were
ever involved in something like this. Don't ever say a single word to the cops. Shut up. 100%. Just shut up. Don't say a word.
reportedly told him to leave, and then things escalated. Witnesses described Austin making physical contact with Carmelo and kind of like touching on him and stuff like that, with some describing it as a shove, while the defense argued that Austin was the first one to get physical. But prosecutors argued that even if there was a physical or some type of physical contact, that did not justify pulling out a knife and stabbing someone in the chest. So the entire case came down to one question: was this self-defense or was it murder? And that's the basic gist of this case for anyone who didn't see that first video or hasn't really heard about this particular case. Again, I covered the full background in my last breakdown.
I was 14 years old when I went into that.
I get so tired of seeing these AI videos, man.
I didn't think what happened to me counted.
So check out that video if you want the full story. But now Carmelo has actually learned his fate. He got 35 years in prison. And there are a few parts of this update that are important to talk about, because this case was not just about what happened under that tent. It became a conversation, I should say, about race. It became a conversation about self-defense. It became a conversation about social media misinformation. It became a conversation about whether people were looking at the evidence or whether they had already picked a side before the trial even started.
I never picked a side, because at first I honestly thought maybe he murdered him until I heard the evidence, like while the trial started. Then I was like, okay, it was 100% self-defense.
Biggest things that happened before the trial started was the jury selection. And this is a very important part about this particular trial here, because when the jury was selected, it was reported that no black jurors were chosen for the panel. And because Carmelo Anthony is black and Austin Metcalf was white, a lot of people immediately started looking at this case through a racial lens. So there are around or more than 500 people on the list of potential jurors. After the process was over, the final jury did not include any black jurors. And before that jury was seated, the defense objected because prosecutors used their strikes to remove 3 black women from the jury pool. And then it was argued that those women were removed because they were educators. And their argument was basically that this incident happened at a school function involving young students, so their occupations as educators were irrelevant. But the defense pushed back and basically said these were the remaining black potential jurors who still had a real chance of making it onto the final jury. And from the defense perspective, once the prosecution removed all 3 of them, that meant no black jurors were left for the final panel. Now, the judge in this case, they reviewed the issue and ultimately denied the defense challenge, finding that the state had a non-racial reason for removing them. And this was a very big part as far as a conversation, very controversial part about this
I don't think it's a jury of your peers, though, unless it's actually a jury of your peers,
trial. Now, this is where
which
it's
is a mixture of people.
very important to slow down and actually clarify something, because a lot of people online started saying, how can this be a jury of his peers if there are no black people on the jury? Just to clarify, legally, jury of your peers does not mean the jury has to match your race. That's not what it means.
I understand that. I do. I understand that completely, but I still think it should be an actual jury of your peers.
Because a black defendant is not legally guaranteed a black jury, and then a white defendant is not legally guaranteed a white jury. It goes both ways.
It should be a
what
mix.
What it really means is that the jury is supposed to come from a fair cross section of the community, and that people cannot be excluded because of race. So the legal question is not simply, are there black people on the jury? The legal question is, were there black jurors excluded because they were black? And in this case, the judge accepted the prosecution's explanation that the strikes were based on occupation, not race. So people can still have their opinions about the optics, because the optics were always going to look bad to some people. And because this case is so racially charged, having no black jurors was always going to become a talking point. So this part doesn't mean that the trial was illegal or unfair.
No, I don't think it was illegal. I didn't say that at all. I just don't think it is actually a jury of your peers unless it's a mix of people, a mixture of all people. I think that's how all juries should be. It should be some black people, some white people, some Mexican people. Like, it should be a mixture.
And that people understand what a lot of these terms mean. Jury of your peers does not mean jury of people who look like you. It just means that a jury was selected from the community through a legal process without unconstitutional discrimination, and this is why the conversation around this case became so messy. So this is before we even got into the trial, okay? And this kind of made a lot of people look at Karmelo as a black teenager being railroaded by the system. And then others saw Austin as an innocent kid whose death was being minimized because the internet turned the case into a political argument.
We were speaking just a little while ago to some women who came here from around North Texas, one from South Dallas, one from DeSoto, about what brought them here. They said they were here to support the...
See, in my other video, I talked about it also, how I thought people were comparing this to the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. And I also thought Kyle Rittenhouse acted in self-defense and was 100% in his right to do what he did. Same as I thought Carmelo Anthony was in his right to do what he did. I don't look at things racially. I seen this as 2 teenage boys who got into an altercation and it escalated, and one was outnumbered and shoved, and he acted in self-defense. That's the way I look at it. I don't look at this like everybody keeps saying a white boy and a black boy. Like, that has nothing to do with me. I could care less what race they were. I see 2 teenage boys who got into an altercation, and one of them defended himself.
Defendant Carmelo Anthony and his family.
The jury that he had amongst what is supposed to be his peers, they weren't going to look at actual facts of the situation. They were going off of emotions and color.
Now, outside the courthouse, this case became a spectacle.
Yeah.
There were supporters.
Everything that went on outside the courthouse did not help the situation on both sides. Freaking, what's his face? Jake Lang being out there making a dumbass spectacle of it, being an idiot and saying hateful shit did not fucking help the situation. And some of the shit that Carmelo Anthony supporters were doing did not help the situation at all. But that doesn't change the fact that it still was self-defense.
Spectators, demonstrators, and people showing up early just to get a seat in the courtroom. So by the time opening statements started, this was already bigger than just a regular murder trial. This had become a national conversation. And inside the courtroom, both sides gave the jury 2 completely different versions of the same event. The prosecution's version was very straightforward. They said that this was a provoked, unjustified murder. They argued that Carmelo was under a tent that did not belong to his school. He was told to leave. He refused, and when the confrontation escalated...
I talked about this in my other video, though. I was in track and cross country. I also grew up in the country and carried a pocket knife every day of my high school career. Never with the intent to hurt somebody, but I carried it just in case I ever needed it, or it was just a habit too, because like I said, I grew up in the country. So I put my cigarettes, my lighter, my phone, my wallet, and my pocket knife in my pocket, and I went to school. Because yes, I was smoking in high school already. I started smoking in junior high. Actually, a little bit younger than that. But so like those were the things that I put in my pocket before I went to school every day. And it was just part of going to school. And I didn't have it clipped where everybody could see it. It was just in my pocket to where people couldn't see it. And I had it in my pocket every day of school. I was in cross country and track. A lot of times when it rains, you run to the closest tent. You don't run to your team's tent. You run to the closest tent to you to get dry. So you're not getting your clothes wet. So you're not getting your bags wet. So you're not getting your equipment wet. Never once when I ran to another team's tent to stay dry was I ever asked 15 times to leave that tent. Not once. Not one time in my entire life did that ever happen.
He pulled out a knife. The state argued that this had nothing to do with race and that the evidence did not support self-defense. So their position was that Karmelo created the situation and had the weapon and decided to respond to this argument with deadly force when he didn't need to.
Saying it was first-degree murder, though, is saying that it was premeditated. So that means they're saying that he left the house with the knife with the intent to go to a track meet and kill somebody. I guarantee he just carried that pocket knife every day. It was probably just in his backpack every day. Same with mine. Mine was either in my pocket or in my backpack every day that I went to school. It was just so like I guarantee he did not leave the house that day with the intent to kill somebody.
And then they were basically saying that you cannot provoke someone, produce a knife, and then take a life. And that was the state's entire.
He didn't provoke them, though. It was raining and he was trying to stay dry. And they provoked him by trying to kick him out of the tent while it was raining.
Frame. Even if Austin touched him first, even if Austin shoved him, even if the situation got heated, the prosecution's argument was that a shove does not justify a stab to the chest. Now, the defense, of course, saw it completely different. Karmelo's attorney argued that there had been a lot of noise around the case and a lot of false information. He said that Karmelo went under the tent to get out of the rain, and then he also described Karmelo as a student who had a much smaller frame than Austin, and argued that Austin made the first physical contact. And that is true. Austin was the first person to touch him, right? And then they also said that Karmelo reacted in fear and chaos, and they were basically saying that Karmelo was put in a frightening situation. He made a split-second decision and acted in self-defense. So basically, it's the same story, just framed in a very different way, right? And the fact here at the end of the day is that there was an argument, there was a confrontation, there was physical contact, there were warning signs allegedly made, and then there were questions about who escalated it, right? At least from the defense perspective. And then, of course, we had the knife. And once the knife came out, the situation changed completely. Because now we're not talking about a school argument anymore. You're talking about deadly force. And then during the trial, jurors were shown enhanced surveillance video from the track meet. But the video was not this crystal clear piece of evidence that answered every question. The footage was from...
Don't buy that camera that's going viral to keep burglars away. Do this instead. For only $22 a month, I got a premium home security questions on this website. I got it all
across the stadium. It was very far away. You couldn't hear anything. You couldn't really see anything. And even though the footage was enhanced, it did not clearly show the actual stabbing in detail. A video expert testified that the video showed movement under the tent and that there appeared to be pushing or shoving.
Yeah, so the video that the dude said, there was a dude that said he watched the video. If you go watch 1090, I reacted to it. If you go watch 1090 Jake's video, there was a dude that was not testifying, but was outside the trial saying he saw a video that was up close to where 4 people jumped Karmelo, and I kind of figured from the get-go that was fake, and that dude never actually saw the video, and that wasn't true. That was somebody just making something up.
Even people covering the trial said it was hard to tell exactly what was happening under the tent. So the video did not necessarily settle the whole debate by itself. That means witness testimony became extremely important, and this is where things started to hurt Karmelo's defense, because several students who were under the tent testified about what they saw. One student reportedly said people were telling Karmelo he should leave the tent. The student said the situation got more aggressive.
See, this is what I don't understand. Why were they telling him to leave the tent? It was raining. I never had this problem. I don't know how many times me, like at a cross country meet, it would be you and a bunch of people from different schools. So it wouldn't just be one school, it would be a bunch of different schools. And it would start raining, and people from other schools would run under the tents of other schools. And never once have I ever got pushed or asked to leave while it was raining. They just were like, they just understood, well, you're trying to stay dry.
And that Karmelo refused to leave. And then witnesses also described Karmelo saying things like, touch me and you'll find out.
Because they were the aggressors. They were aggressing on him. He was outnumbered. Don't touch me. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm just trying to stay dry. I ran under this tent to stay dry. And now you guys are trying to force me out of here. You're pushing me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. You know what I mean? Like, it's that simple.
According to some testimony, Karmelo was asked to leave as many as 15 times. So that detail obviously matters because it speaks to the moment of escalation, or at least before. Because if the jury believed Karmelo had multiple chances to leave and he refused, that makes the self-defense argument much harder. Because self-defense is not just about whether somebody touched you first. It's also about whether your response was reasonable. And prosecutors lean into that. They also asked witnesses whether anyone tried to gang up on Karmelo. One witness reportedly said no. They asked whether Austin looked like he was trying to pick a fight. One witness reportedly said no. They asked whether
If he wasn't trying to pick a fight, though, he wouldn't have pushed him.
Karmelo looked like he was trying to pick a fight, and then that witness reportedly said yes. Another witness said this did not look like self-defense to them and described Karmelo as the aggressor. Now, obviously, witnesses can see things differently, right? And in emotional, chaotic moments, people's memories can obviously differ. But when multiple witnesses start giving testimony that supports one side's version of events, that can become powerful for a jury. So it's not necessarily about our opinion, it's about what they say happened, because they were there at the end of the day. And then for Karmelo, his defense, they're basically just arguing that Austin made the first physical contact. And again, that is true based on the arrest report, right? And so from their perspective, if Austin put hands on him first, the defense could obviously argue that Karmelo did not start the physical fight. And then they kind of responded to that by saying, even if Austin pushed him, you do not get to respond with a knife. And then that became the central question of this case. How much force is too much force? At one point, does self-defense become an unjustified killing? And what does the law allow you to do when someone puts hands on you, but you're the one holding a deadly weapon? And then the testimony also addressed Austin's twin brother, Hunter. There had been a lot of speculation online about what role Hunter played in the confrontation. A lot of people were basically saying that Austin and Hunter, they were kind of like ganging up on Karmelo. And that's actually a very big narrative that a lot of people have taken as a fact. But according to reporting from the actual trial, witnesses said Hunter was on the other side of the tent, scrolling on his phone, and did not become involved until after Austin was stabbed. And of course that matters, because online a lot of people have been kind of building that narrative before the trial. And so when a lot of this testimony...
Well, even some of the witnesses said, though, that there was more than one person. Not that it was necessarily Austin's twin brother, but there was more than one person confronting Karmelo and kind of getting in his face and stuff. It wasn't just Austin.
ended up coming out, a lot of those narratives did not hold up the same way. Now, another very emotional part of the trial was what happened after the stabbing. A coach testified that he spoke with Karmelo afterward, and according to reports, the coach said Karmelo appeared generally upset. Karmelo allegedly said he put hands on me, and he kept repeating that idea that Austin put his hands on him first. And there was also testimony from a school resource officer who detained Karmelo after the incident, and they were saying that Karmelo was very cooperative at that moment. And that same person also testified that Karmelo had said, "I'm not alleged, I did it." And this is of course very important because it shows what Karmelo's mindset seemed to be right after the incident. He was not denying that he stabbed Austin. He was saying he did it because Austin touched him. But that still left the jury with the same legal question. Was that enough to justify deadly force? I mean, this is the whole point, or this was the whole point of this trial. Was this justified, right? And clearly, based on a verdict, the jury thought it was not. Another important part here was that Karmelo did not want to testify. So he didn't testify in this case, right? And legally, he had every right not to testify. Obviously, he doesn't have to take the stand.
Testifying as when you're the person going to trial is never a good idea. A lawyer will tell you that every time. It wasn't. Yes, he could testify, Of course, but his lawyers were the ones telling him not to, not him, because it's never a good idea for you to go on the stand because it was an emotional thing for you. So, like, prosecutors can pull on your emotions in certain ways and try to get you to slip up. And like I said, if you say one thing the wrong way, it's may not be the way you meant it, but that's the way people can take it. Just like when the officer was saying, I got the alleged suspect, and he said, I'm not alleged, I did it. People are taking that way out of context and saying that was him admitting to killing him. Yes, that was him admitting to him being the suspect in the situation, but it was still self-defense. He wasn't saying that he was the suspect and he killed him, he murdered him. You know what I mean? He didn't murder him.
Cannot force him to testify, and the jury is not supposed to hold that against him. But practically, when your defense is built around your state of mind, fear, chaos, terror, split-second reaction, there's always a challenge if the jury never hears directly from you. And yes, your own defense can explain it. Witnesses can describe what they saw, even though a lot of those witnesses were not testifying in favor of Karmelo because of what they had seen, right? And of course, his lawyers can argue a bunch of things, but the jury never heard Karmelo personally explain what he felt in that moment. And honestly, maybe that could have helped him in this case. I don't really know, right?
No.
But if you're saying that you were afraid and you were protecting yourself and the jury had seen you kind of like speak about those things and what you felt in the moment, honestly, I feel like that would have probably really helped his case.
It could have, but it also could hurt your case because, like I said, the prosecutors are good at their job and they know how to make people get emotional, and they can literally get you to say something a certain way that, even though that's not what you intended it to sound like, it might sound like that, and then it persuades the jury.
That's just what I think, right? Because he's saying that's what happened. But then again, that doesn't mean that he was wrong for not testifying. But I'm just surprised that if you're saying that that's what happened, then why would you not be on the stand testifying for what really happened if you thought you were justified? And in a self-defense case, I just feel like that absence can definitely be felt because a big part is about what the defendant, the person being accused of the particular crime, reasonably believed in that moment. I was really fearing for my life, and so that's why I did this. And that's when a lot of the emotion that's going to come from that particular person can affect what the jury actually thinks. So, of course, the jury, since they did not hear it from Karmelo himself, they were left to piece together everything just based on the information they had. Now, interestingly enough, the judge allowed the jury to consider manslaughter as a lesser option, so they didn't only have to choose between murder and not guilty. They could have said, we do not fully believe this was self-defense, but we also don't think this was murder. So that would have been manslaughter, right? And that would have carried a much lower punishment.
And that's what it should have been.
For Karmelo, that was a major opportunity. If they wanted to compromise, manslaughter was sitting right there, but they didn't take it.
If anything, it should have been manslaughter on only 2 gallons. 100%. Maybe not self-defense, but it wasn't murder. Like, he didn't go there intended to kill him.
Tower, hoping that it would.
After deliberating, the jury found Karmelo guilty of murder. That was the first major blow. So at this point, the self-defense argument had failed. They rejected the manslaughter option, and Karmelo was now facing the punishment range for murder. But the case was still not over, because after the guilty verdict, the trial moved into the sentencing phase. And this is where the defense had one major argument, and that argument is called sudden passion. Now, sudden passion is different from manslaughter. This is where people kind of get things confused, so let's just simplify this. Manslaughter would have been a different conviction before the guilty verdict, right? So they could have convicted him of manslaughter instead of murder, but they didn't do that.
Yeah.
They convicted him of murder. But during the sentencing, the defense could still argue sudden passion. And if the jury accepted this sudden passion thing, right, it would not erase the murder conviction, but it could reduce how the law treated the punishment. So instead of facing 5 to 99 years or life, the punishment range could have been reduced to, let's say, 2 to 20 years. So that was a huge deal. So really, Karmelo could have gotten a sentence that looked more like 10, 15, or 20 years. But they rejected sudden passion. And he stayed in the...
Well, they kind of didn't reject it because they gave him 35 years. They didn't completely believe that he premeditated this. You know what I mean? It was still the heat of passion.
Full murder punishment range. And then Karmelo's mother was actually called as a witness.
And he could get out in 15 years.
She testified about her son. She described him as her oldest child and said he would always be her baby. And then she was asked if Karmelo regretted what he did, she said yes, and that he was sorry. And here they were obviously trying to humanize him to remind the jury that this was still a young person, that he was 17 at the time when this happened, that he had a mother sitting there watching him face decades in prison. And another big part here from the prosecution's case, right, was that they really wanted the court to focus on Austin. They reminded them that Austin was a son and a brother, and that he had a family that he was never ever going to be able to see again. And they were never going to be able to see him, right?
And that's a super sad part of the situation. Nobody deserved to die here. I'm not trying to take away from the fact that somebody lost their life. You know what I mean? Like, I completely understand the fact that somebody lost their life in this situation, and that's never, that nothing is ever going to change that. Sorry, y'all. But I also understand the fact that they could have very simply just let him stand there while it was raining instead of trying to force him to leave their tent, like I did many times when I was in track and cross country and stood under other people's tents. It happens a lot. So, like, the fact that this is trying to be, oh, he was asked to leave 15 times. Why is it that he was asked to leave 15 times? That's a better question. Why were they trying to force him out? Instead of just being a good sport and being like, yeah, man, you're good. I understand it's raining. You're just trying to stay dry. Because that's what happened to me every time. Never once was a coach or another player or another track runner or another cross country runner like, nah, get the fuck out of our tent. You can't be in here, and pushed me and threw my bag. That never happened. Never once. So, like, why was it that they were trying to force him out?
And then they talked about things like he would never get to graduate, fall in love, grow up, or live out the rest of his life because his life was taken from him. And that is a very powerful argument in sentencing. I mean, the fact that his life ended at 17 years old is tragic, right? Now, after about 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with the sentence, 35 years in prison. And that number says a lot because the jury did not give him the minimum. They did not give him 5 years. They didn't give him 10 years. They didn't accept sudden passion and cap it at 20. But they also did not give him 99 years or life. They landed at 35. So in a way, the jury punished him seriously, but they did not go all the way to the maximum. Karmelo will be eligible for parole after serving half of that sentence. But even with parole eligibility, this is still a massive sentence.
Facts.
Because
15 years is a long time. I was facing 6 to 30 on my gun charges and shit when I was on house arrest for over a year and shit. But they ended up dropping my Class X down to a Class 3 and a 4. And I got time served because I would have had to do 6 months in county. But I ended up getting time served because I did 380 days on house arrest. So that goes towards your time that you would have had to do. So I ended up getting out, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, 15 years is still a long time. And that's the possibility for parole. That doesn't mean that he will get parole in 15 years.
half of 35 is 17 and a half, and Karmelo was 17 when this happened. So even if he becomes eligible for parole halfway through, he could still spend around the same amount of time in prison as he had been alive.
That's a long
this
time.
Incident happened. So that's kind of crazy to think about.
He'll be almost, you know what I mean? He'll be 35, 36, something like that when he's eligible for parole.
A decision that happened in seconds turned into decades. And after the sentence was read, Austin's family gave victim impact statements. His mother spoke about the pain of losing her son. She said that Karmelo may have been sentenced to 35 years, but she had been sentenced to a lifetime without her son. So even though Karmelo got 35 years, Austin's family got life. So for them, there's really no number that fixes anything. Austin is still gone. His twin brother still has to wake up every day without him.
And this is all facts. This is all shit that needs to be taken into consideration. But this doesn't change the facts of the case. The fact that their son is gone forever, which is extremely sad, and I hate that, you know what I mean? Like, because nobody needed to die in this situation. It doesn't change the facts of the case that their son is gone forever, you know what I mean?
His parents still have to live with that empty room, those memories, and all the things he never got to become. And I feel like this is the part that a lot of times people forget when they turn cases like this into internet arguments. I really don't think this is a race war. That's just my opinion, right? This is a real life tragedy that should have never
Exactly.
happened.
I
At the
hate
same
the fact that people are turning this into race shit. It's disgusting.
time, Carmelo's family also has to live with the fact that their son is now going to prison for decades for the decisions he made. So now they have to watch him enter the prison system as a young man with a 35-year prison sentence. And that's why this case is tragic all around. I mean, nobody won here. Austin's family did not win. Carmelo's family did not win.
No, they
The
both
community
lost.
did not win. The only thing that happened is the legal system made a decision about accountability. The jury heard the
Well, the only people that win here is the prison system. They're the only ones that win here. Because now they get to make money off of Carmelo for 17 to 35 years. That's the only people that won on this situation.
evidence. They rejected self-defense. They rejected manslaughter. They rejected
Because if people are wondering what I mean by that, all prison systems, for the most part now, state prisons, are privately owned. And they get money from the state per prisoner to house these people, and they make a lot of money. And these private prison corporations are multi-billion-dollar corporations that make a lot of money, and it's made by the state paying them. So yes, it's taxpayer money that's paying it, but the people that own these corporations that run these prisons, those are the only people that win in this situation. Everybody else in this situation lost.
sudden passion, and they sentenced Carmelo Anthony to 35 years in prison. And the thing about this particular for a lot of people, some people looked at it as a black teenager being treated harshly by the system. Some people looked at it and saw a white teenager being killed and then watched the internet try to justify or minimize his death. So the majority of people, it feels like they focused on race. Other people focused on self-defense. Some people focused on school safety. Others on what really started this entire argument or situation that happened. From my perspective, I guess the bigger lesson about this particular situation and this tragedy that happened is how fast pride, fear, anger, and lives. Because when you strip away all the politics and all the internet noise, this started with something that should have been survivable. An argument over a tent, a rainy day, a school track meet.
Exactly. So that's what I've been saying this whole time. Something simple. Like why could they just simply not have just let him stay under the tent while it was raining? Something simple as not 100 times, but something I did a couple times throughout my cross country and track days in school. Like why was that not that easy? Like why did it have to turn into more? Why did they feel like they had to force him out of the tent while it was raining? I don't understand like why this argument needed to happen. You know what I mean? As as much of a hothead as I was in my life and getting in trouble and fights and all this type of shit, like this was a very simple argument that didn't need to happen.
Somebody being told to leave, somebody feeling disrespected, somebody putting hands on somebody, and then a weapon comes out. This is the line that changed everything, right? Once that knife comes out, it's no longer a regular teenage argument. And now one teenager is dead. Another one is sentenced to
Imagine being able to
All
build
facts.
anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
35 years. And both families are left with the reality that is. And that's why walking away is not a weakness. People say that all the time, but cases like this show you what it really means. Walking away can feel embarrassing in the moment. It can feel like you let somebody punk you. It can feel like people are watching and judging you based on that situation and saying that you're weak because you walked away.
Yeah, see, I have a hard problem with that. I'm on like don't put your hands on me. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6 any day of the week. So I understand what Carmelo was feeling in his head. Like, do not put your hands on me. And when they put their hands on him and he came back up with that knife, the consequences of what happened got very serious, very quick. Somebody lost their life, and somebody else lost their son. Somebody else lost their brother, and Carmelo lost his life. at least for a long portion of his life. Do I think that's right? Do I think Carmelo should be losing his life? No. But the consequences of defending yourself or not letting somebody push you around or letting somebody like fearing for your life and instead of retreating, defending yourself can get really serious really quick. And sometimes our laws aren't set up to actually back up you in a self defense claim. There's so many loopholes, there's so many strict rules of how you can legally defend yourself in America. And that needs to be changed.
But if walking away means you get to go home and the other person gets to go home, then walking away is the strongest decision in the room. And this is what happens when nobody walks away. And in my opinion, the person who should have walked away is Carmelo. Now, this is where
No, they should have just let him stay. Yes, Carmelo could have walked away. I'm not saying that. But they also should have just let him stay in the tent. He was just trying to stay dry. It was pouring down rain. A rain delay happened. They all ran to a tent. He was trying to keep himself and his bag dry. And instead of just being a good sportsmanship and uh being a good person in general that's playing sports and running track and being like, "Nah, man, I understand. It's raining. Come in our tent." Because that happened a couple times where coaches would see us running or whatever and they would be like, "Come in here because it's raining." Never once did I have a problem where a coach or a player was like, "No, you cannot come in our tent." I don't understand why they were trying to force him out of their tent. It just doesn't make sense to me.
the bigger
This
conversation is
wasn't like an NBA player trying to go sit on another NBA player or another NBA team's bench while it wasn't raining. You know what I mean? We're outside and it's raining and thunderstorming, and I'm trying not to get wet and get my bag wet that has my wallet and my phone and all my valuables in it. I'm trying to get under this tent and stay dry, and you guys are trying to kick me out for what?
being had about, was 35 years fair? Should have he have maybe gotten more? Should have he have gotten less? Because depending on who you ask, some people are going to say 35 years is too harsh for someone who was 17 at the time. Some people are going to say that this was a young man who made one terrible decision in the middle of a chaotic situation, and that his whole life should not be completely thrown away because of a few seconds. But on the other side, you have to ground yourself in what actually happened here. Austin Metcalf is never coming back. He was 17 years old, was stabbed in the chest, and the knife pierced his heart, and that killed him. He died at a school track meet in front of students, coaches, and his own twin brother.
Which is traumatic to everybody. Everybody there is scarred for life, including Carmelo. Carmelo has to live with the fact that he killed somebody. Like,
And Carmelo Anthony took his life. So as much as people can debate the number of years, we can't lose sight of the reality of what happened. A young man was killed. A family lost their son. A twin brother lost the person he...
but it was in self-defense. This is the part that I don't understand is as soon as you put your hands on somebody and somebody feels like they're outnumbered, and as soon as you put your hands on somebody, that's usually the start of a fight. As soon as somebody gets pushed, that's usually when the fight starts. So as soon as he got pushed, he probably assumed that he was about to start getting beat up. He's on the ground. He just got pushed to the ground over trying to stay dry. He's outnumbered. It's just him versus them. So he comes back up with a knife and defends himself.
came into this world with. And Austin did not get a second chance. So personally, when I look at the full picture, I think Carmelo Anthony is very lucky he did not get life in prison. I think he's very lucky he did not get 99 years.
I think he's lucky that he didn't get 99 years, but I don't think he should have.
For all intents and purposes, would have basically been life. And I know some people might not like hearing that, but That's honestly how I personally see it. Because when you take somebody's life, especially in a situation where the jury already rejected self-defense, 35 years is serious, but it is not the maximum. It's not the harshest sentence he could have received.
No.
And if he becomes eligible for
That's why
parole after...
that's why I said I think he's lucky that he didn't get life for 99 years or even the death penalty like people wanted. A lot of people wanted him to get the death penalty. I've seen so many posts saying hang him. Like, what are we talking about? Hang him? Seriously? But at the same point, I don't think that's what he deserved. I think he deserved to be acquitted.
serving half of that sentence, that means there's at least a possibility that he can still walk out of prison one day. Austin will never get that possibility. Austin does not get to grow up. He doesn't get to graduate, build a life, start a family, or become whoever he was supposed to become. That future is gone forever. So when people say 35 years is too much, I understand the instinct to look at Karmelo's age and feel like it's tragic, because it is tragic, right? Objectively speaking. But you have to ask yourself, what is the value of the life that was taken? What is the value of Austin's future? What is the value of his family having to live with this forever?
It's unreplaceable, but what are the actions that led up to that?
And that's why I personally think Karmelo got off easier than he could have. Not because 35 years is light. It's not. 35 years is a huge prison sentence. But when the other side of that equation is a 17-year-old being killed for something that should have never reached that point, it's hard for me to look at 35.
Exactly. It should have never reached that point. It could have been as simple as, yeah, man, you can stay in the tent while it's raining, and then once it stops raining, go back to your tent. Simple as that. Simple as that. It should have never escalated to the point where they were asking him to leave 15 times and then pushing him. It should have never escalated that far.
Say that the system went too far, because it didn't. The saddest
It
part
did.
about a story like this is how a life was taken basically for nothing.
Parents of children who play Roblox. If your child
Because when you really break that justified Austin being killed, nothing. No argument, no disrespect, no school tent, no shove. None of that was worth a life. Now, to be
No.
fair, Austin did put hands on Karmelo first, based on what was described in court and based on the arrest report. And I don't agree with that either. I think he should have kept his hands to himself. I think so. No matter how frustrated Austin was, no matter how wrong he felt Karmelo was for being under that tent.
Why was Karmelo wrong for trying to stay dry, though? This is the part that I don't understand. I don't understand this narrative that Karmelo was wrong for being under the tent. It was raining.
Touching somebody first can escalate a situation very quickly. That part matters. But even then, we have to talk about proportionality. What happened to just throwing a punch? What happened to fighting for a few minutes with your fists?
Yeah, but when you feel outnumbered, which Karmelo was, if I'm outnumbered, I'm not just fighting. I will fight one-on-one. I've been in a lot of fights one-on-one in my life. But as soon as I feel outnumbered, that's when the weapons come out. And he was outnumbered.
And walking away with both people still alive. What happened to getting into it, cooling down, maybe even shaking hands later and going home? That used to be a lot more common back in the day. Two young men could get into a fight.
Yeah.
Emotions could flare up.
One-on-one.
Fight could have been involved. But at the end of the day, both of them still had a chance to live. Both of them still had a chance to grow up. Both of them still had a chance to learn from it. But once...
See, you're acting like this is something new, though. People used to fight. Yeah, people still fight one-on-one all the time. But since the beginning of time, people have been killing each other in one-on-one fights too. Because some people, whether it's one-on-one or not, don't play with their life, and they know in a one-on-one fight you can still die. And especially Karmelo was a lot smaller than Austin. If you still feel like your life is in danger, sometimes people don't think, oh, I should just fight. They think my life is in danger. What can I do to make sure my life isn't in danger anymore?
Knife comes out, everything changes. Now it's not a fist fight anymore. Now it's not teenagers. It's not about two teenagers and their pride anymore. Now it's not just two people arguing over a tent. Now it's life or death. And in this case, it became death. This is why emotional regulation and emotional self-control is so important. And honestly, you can say that for both sides. Karmelo was under a tent that did not belong to his school. Austin wanted him to leave. And on some level, you can understand why he felt like, why are you here? It's not your team's 10.
But you shouldn't feel like that. Like I've said over and over again, the several times that I had to run under another team's tent while it was raining, I was always welcomed. Come on, come in here. It's raining. You know what I mean? Or I just would run in there, and never once did they try to kick me out of the tent. What happened to sportsmanship?
You've been told to leave. Get the hell out of here, right? But of course, he should have not put hands on him. He should
But they shouldn't have been trying to kick him out of the tent anyway.
have found an adult. He should have walked away, or I don't know, call some of the coaches and let him handle that. I don't know what he could have done, right? Because once you touch somebody, you don't really know how they're going to respond. But then we get to Karmelo. And based on what came out in court, it sounds like in that moment, to me at least, it sounds like he already had made up his mind that if Austin touched him, he was going to do something serious. And that is the part that is hard to get past. Because when you say something like touch me and find out, and then somebody touches you and your response is to stab them in the chest.
Because some people don't play about their lives. Like, don't touch me. I'm serious about my life. Like, I'm dead serious about my life, and I don't play about it. I'm not going to risk me getting hurt. And if I feel like I'm outnumbered, I am not going to play about my life, and I'm going to defend myself.
Is not a small reaction. That is not just a regular fight. That is a deadly decision. And with everything said, it is clear that there was only one victim here, and that victim was Austin Metcalf. He did not deserve to get killed that way.
No, he did
He did
not
not
deserve to die.
lose his life at a high school track meet. He did not deserve for his final moments to happen under a tent in front of other students and his own brother. And there is something deeply sad about how fast things can escalate.
Yeah, it's
because
extremely
if you rewind the
sad.
entire situation, there were so many moments where this could have gone differently. If Karmelo had never gone under that tent, we would have not known his name today. If you really think about it, that's what it comes down to. If Karmelo had left when he realized he was not wanted there,
But if they would have just let Carmelo stay there and stay dry, we would have never known who Carmelo and Austin were. You can reverse it. Carmelo was just trying to stay dry. So yeah, you can say if Carmelo never went under that tent, we would never know who Carmelo is. But you could also say if Austin would have just had sportsmanship and let Carmelo stay there and stay dry while it was raining, we would also never know who Carmelo is. See how there's two sides to each coin?
we would have not known his name today. If Austin had not put hands on him, maybe this would have never happened. But if Karmelo had taken his bag and walked away, I don't think this would have happened. So this would have basically become a school argument that nobody even remembers a week later or a day later.
But it could have been as simple like he keeps going back to the fact to blaming it on Carmelo. Even though he'll do the other side, he instantly notice how he goes right back to the fact of blaming it on Carmelo instead of going with the same narrative of like doing both sides. He'll just do both sides for one thing and then go right back to blaming it on Carmelo.
Actually. But that's not what happened. And now everybody involved has to live with this reality. Austin Metcalf would be at home with his family right now. He would be planning his future. He would be growing up. He would be living his life. And Carmelo Anthony would most likely just be a regular young man doing the same thing. Instead, he took a life, and Carmelo is about to spend the best years of his youth wasting away in a prison cell.
Instead, he did self-defense and defended himself, and now he is going to waste the rest of his youth in a prison cell over something that he should have been acquitted of.
There's absolutely no winner here.
There is no winner here,
though. You
though.
walk away feeling good about the
No.
outcome. This is just
No, Carmelo has to live with the fact that somebody died, and that I'm sure every night he fucking cannot sleep because of it. It's a sad outcome for everybody in the story, and it should have never happened.
This is just a loss. One life was taken for absolutely nothing. Another life has now been buried behind prison walls, and two families will never be the same again. So regardless of where people stand on a verdict, the biggest lesson from this case, to me at least, is walk away. Control your emotions. Don't let pride, anger, fear, or disrespect push you into a decision that can never be undone. Because one moment can become 35 years of your life.
See, this is the one part I disagree on him with. If you can walk away, of course. But I am never going to go into a situation where I think my life could be in danger over something small, even if I feel like my life is in danger, I will be judged by 12 over being carried by 6 any day of the week. I'm not saying that take that as your own. You know what I mean? You do not have to live by that. Don't necessarily freaking even agree with it. But if I feel like my life could possibly be a danger, I do not play about my life, and I will defend myself at all costs every time. But man, let me know what y'all think about this case. I think it is sad. I think, like he said, both sides, nobody wins. Like I said, I think the prison system is the only people who won here. Oh, sorry. I keep burping. But I think the prison system is the only people that won in this situation. And yeah, it's a sad situation, man. But let me know what y'all think below, man. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. It's still live checking out. Peace out, y'all.